evening, and welcome to Third Church, New York City. Let's begin by singing hymn number 49. I'll read the first verse. Dear Lord and Father of us all, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind. In purer lives thy service find. In deeper reverence, praise. Hymn number 49. I'll read from the Bible and correlative passages from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. This week's readings were inspired by the concepts of quietness and rest. The Holy Bible, King James Version. Leviticus. I am the Lord your God. Wherefore ye shall do my statutes, and keep my judgments, and do them, and ye shall dwell in the land in safety. And the land shall yield her fruit, and ye shall eat your fill, and dwell therein in safety. Proverbs. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. The righteous considereth the cause of the poor, but the wicked regardeth not to know it. Scornful men bring a city into a snare, but wise men turn away wrath. If a wise man contendeth with a foolish man, whether he rage or laugh, there is no rest. A fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. If a ruler hearken to lies, all his servants are wicked. The poor and the deceitful man meet together. The Lord lighteneth both their eyes. The king that faithfully judgeth the poor, his throne shall be established forever. Hosea. And in that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air, and I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. Ecclesiastes. There was a little city, and few men within it, but there came a great king against it, and besieged it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. The words of wise men are heard in quiet, more than the cry of him that ruleth among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war. Jeremiah. Therefore fear thou not, O my servant Jacob, saith the Lord, neither be dismayed, O Israel. For lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid. Isaiah. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Exodus. And Moses said unto the Lord, see, thou sayest unto me, bring up this people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. Now therefore I pray thee, if I have found grace in thy sight, show me now thy way, that I may know thee, that I may find grace in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee, and will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. Genesis. And there was strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzites dwelled together in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. Isaiah. For thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest shall you be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Matthew. And it came to pass, when Jesus had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. All things are delivered unto me of my Father. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden light. Luke. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood staunched. And Jesus said, Who touched me? When all denied, Peter and they that were with him said, Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And Jesus said, Somebody hath touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said unto her, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. Mark. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Habakkuk. O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. The mountains saw thee, and they trembled. The sun and moon stood still in their habitation. Thou didst walk through the sea with thine horses, through the heap of great waves. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength. Zephaniah. The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. Isaiah. Until the Spirit be poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness be a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be counted for a forest, then judgment shall dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness remain in the fruitful field, and the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness and assurance forever. And my people shall dwell in a peaceable habitation, and in sure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. John, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Psalms. There be many that say, who will show us any good? Lord, lift thou up the light of thy countenance upon us. Thou hast put gladness in my heart. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. And from the Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. The nature of Christianity is peaceful and blessed. But in order to enter into the kingdom, the anchor of host must be cast beyond the veil of matter into the Shekinah into which Jesus has passed before us. And this advance beyond matter must come through the joys and triumphs of the righteous, as well as through their sorrows and afflictions. Like our Master, we must depart from material sense into the spiritual sense of being. In the quiet sanctuary of earnest longings, we must deny sin and plead God's allness. We must resolve to take up the cross and go forth with honest hearts to work and watch for wisdom, truth, and love. Imperfect mortals grasp the ultimate of spiritual perfection slowly, but to begin aright and to continue the strife of demonstrating the great problem of being is doing much. This strife consists in the endeavor to forsake error of every kind and to possess no other consciousness but good. Through the wholesome chastisements of love, we are helped onward in the march towards righteousness, peace, and purity, which are the landmarks of science. If ecclesiastical sects or medical schools turn a deaf ear to the teachings of Christian Science, then part from these opponents, as did Abraham when he parted from Lot, and say in thy heart, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Immortals, or God's children in divine science, are one harmonious family, but mortals, or the children of men in material sense, are discordant and oftentimes false brethren. Right and wrong, truth and error will be at strife in the minds of students until victory rests on the side of invincible truth. This material world is even now becoming the arena for conflicting forces. On one side, there will be discord and dismay. On the other side, there will be science and peace. The breaking up of material beliefs may seem to be famine and pestilence, want and woe, sin, sickness, and death, which assume new phases until their nothingness appears. These disturbances will continue until the end of error, when all discord will be swallowed up in spiritual truth. Mortal error will vanish in a moral chemicalization. This mental fermentation has begun and will continue until all errors of belief yield to understanding. Belief is changeable, but spiritual understanding is changeless. Reforms have commonly been attended with bloodshed and persecution, even when the end has been brightness and peace. But the present, new yet old reform in religious faith will teach men patiently and wisely to stem the tide of sectarian bitterness whenever it flows inward. Today, the healing power of truth is widely demonstrated as an immanent, eternal science instead of a phenomenal exhibition. Its appearing is the coming anew of the gospel of on earth peace, goodwill toward men. This coming, as was promised by the Master, is for the establishment as a permanent dispensation among men, but the mission of Christian Science now, as in the time of its earlier demonstration, is not primarily one of physical healing. Now, as then, signs and wonders are wrought in the metaphysical healing of physical disease, but these signs are only to demonstrate its divine origin, to attest the reality of the higher mission of the Christ power to take away the sins of the world. Spirit's senses are without pain, and they are forever at peace. Nothing can hide from them the harmony of all things and the might and permanence of truth. Who that has felt the loss of human peace has not gained stronger desires for spiritual joy? This spiritual sense of being, forsaking matter for spirit, by no means suggests man's absorption into deity and the loss of his identity, but confers upon man enlarged individuality, a wider sphere of thought and action, a more expansive love, a higher and more permanent peace. Spiritual living and blessedness are the only evidences by which we can recognize the true existence and feel the unspeakable peace which comes from an all-absorbing spiritual love. Therefore, acquaint now thyself with him and be at peace. Through divine science, Spirit, God, unites understanding to eternal harmony. The calm and exalted thought or spiritual apprehension is at peace. Thus, the dawn of ideas goes on, forming each successive stage of progress. When we reach our limits of mental endurance, we conclude that intellectual labor has been carried sufficiently far. But when we realize that immortal mind is ever active and that spiritual energies can neither wear out, nor can so-called material law trespass upon God-given powers and resources, we are able to rest in truth, refreshed by the assurances of immortality, opposed to mortality. The struggle for truth makes one strong instead of weak, resting instead of wearying one. If men understood their real spiritual source to be all blessedness, they would struggle for recourse to the spiritual and be at peace. But the deeper the error into which mortal mind is plunged, the more intense the opposition to spirituality, till error yields to truth. It is the living Christ, the practical truth, which makes Jesus the resurrection and the life to all who follow him indeed. Obeying his precious precepts, following his demonstration so far as we apprehend it, we drink of his cup, partake of his bread, are baptized with his purity, and at last we shall rest, sit down with him in a full understanding of the divine principle which triumphs over death. Now, cried the apostle, is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation, meaning not that men must prepare, not that now men must prepare for a future world salvation or safety, but that now is the time in which to experience that salvation in spirit and in life. The lightnings and thunderbolts of error may burst and flash till the cloud is cleared and the tumult dies away in the distance. Then the raindrops of divinity refresh the earth. As St. Paul says, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God, of spirit. Let's pray for the congregation, first silently, then repeat together the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Let's sing hymn number 291. Quiet, Lord, my froward heart. Make me gentle, pure, and mild, upright, simple, free from art. Make me as a little child, from distrust and envy free, pleased with all that pleaseth thee. Hymn number 291. This church is a branch of the Mother Church, the First Church of Christ Scientist in Boston, Massachusetts. We hold Sunday services at 11 a.m. and Wednesday testimony meetings at 7:30 p.m. We also have services in Spanish, Sundays at 1 p.m. and Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. All services are now held online and in person. We thank you for observing social distancing and for wearing a mask. Third Church offers Sunday school classes online and in person for children and teens. These free one-hour classes are held each Sunday. At Sunday school, students learn how much God loves them and cares for them. They also learn about the Bible characters and lessons and the healing power of truth. For more information on times and classes, please send us an email, thirdchurch@thirdchurchnyc.com. Third Church maintains a reading room on the first floor of this building The reading room provides a quiet place for prayer and study, and all are welcome. Here you may purchase books and recordings on Christian Science. The reading room also has the latest issues of the Christian Science Monitor, an award-winning international news weekly, available to read or purchase. Reading room hours are Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. Christian Science is practical, and it heals. Our meeting is now open for all to share experiences of healing and spiritual insights that prove God's ever-presence and power in their lives. If you're listening by telephone and would like to share, press *6 and wait until your line is unmuted. Please speak directly into the microphone of your telephone. Don't use the speakerphone. This way your message will be easier to hear. If you're watching by Zoom, you can choose the raise your hand icon, or you can unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you for your readings. During the last few months, I've been thinking a lot about peace and what that means in Christian Science. And of course, first and foremost, it means peace with God. Peace through understanding and peace through obedience. Peace through endeavoring to use spiritual sense and live in the spirit rather than be distracted by material sense. And I find also that praying with the dailies helps, and in particular the daily that whose subject is malpractice, that we cannot be malpracticed a day or night, awake or asleep, and that we are laws unto ourselves. And I've really worked a lot with that in the last 6 months or so. And of course, the first thing we have to know is that we are obeying God's law so far as we apprehend it and can obey it, but that we can't be taken out of God's law by cultural or societal issues, by the general beliefs of mortal mind. I've worked in particular quite a bit with old theology. Practitioners would say from time to time, well, that's old theology. And I'd think, well, okay, but I'm not really vulnerable to old theology. But when you really look at what old theology means, and in its variety of expressions, one has got to guard oneself from old theology, from atheism, which is in many ways at the heart of secularism, agnosticism, believing maybe that there's a God. And I was saying to someone the other day that I think sometimes protracted healings are an effect of agnosticism not destroyed within one's own consciousness. In other words, agnosticism would say if he's a God, certainly he is not all in all, or that he's remote, or that he's inconsistent, that he's maybe somewhere up in the clouds, maybe not. And Christian Science really is the destroyer of agnosticism. And of course, Christian Science is an explication of the first commandment. So a practitioner was saying to me a while back, to protect yourself from malpractice, you have got to obey the first commandment, because that way error cannot get at you, because error is always trying to dethrone God and make him less than God, make him less than ever-present or omnipotent. And so some of these things are giving me more peace and quiet in my thought, and that enables me then to pray more thoroughly. My teacher said a few times we need to pray from a cleaned up mind, and I think she meant by that is that we make sure that we're not in conflict with anybody, with ourselves, with God. We're not in conflict with Materia Medica, with other denominations, but we certainly see them for what they are and for what we appreciate whatever good they can provide at this point, but see that they are not functioning on a scientific, capital S, basis. So thank you for those readings and a good reminder of peace for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to share a testimony from a Spanish speaker who wrote in after listening to a Spanish service, Wednesday evening testimony service. And I have it here printed out, and I read it for the Spanish service, so I'm going to translate it as I go along. But it speaks kind of to the feeling that many people have being shut in for these many months and worried about world events and health, world health, etc. And I think she just expresses it so beautifully. That's why I wanted to share it with you. In one case, it's very simple. In another case, it's very profound. She says, "Thank you and many blessings. We're so happy to know that we're all together working in this beautiful truth." And then she says, closing the month, it was my desire to give this testimony. I listened to these lessons on Wednesday, and I try to put what I learn into practice. And then she said, there are days when everything seems so complicated and difficult that I can hardly prepare the noon meal. And then I think of this passage from Mary Baker Eddy. It's on page 283. And she says, mind is the source of all movement, and there is no inertia to retard or check its perpetual and harmonious action. And then she goes on to say, the infinite mind never forgets anything. And so in this way, I've been able to be of great service to my family as their chef. And I can't even think about having forgotten how to do this or forgotten what I wanted to fix for their meal. And then she quotes or paraphrases Mary Baker Eddy. She says, divine love responds to every human need. And then she says thank you to all, and to the church, the Third Church in New York. She said the services are always very inspiring. So I want to say thank you again to this person who submitted this testimony in writing.
Thank you for your readings on rest for the weary. I've been thinking about what makes one weary, and it's the looking at error, the battle inside in looking at error and the allness and goodness of God, both sides, instead of staying on the one side of God good. I've been doing a lot of work with trying to stay, seeking to stay on the side of good whenever the challenges constantly coming in and mounting up. And reading in Science and Health so much about God's goodness. God is all in all. God is all powerful. Continue to keep that in my thought instead of even thinking about the challenges is where I am seeking to stay at the moment. So I really appreciate the readings that are supporting my growth at this moment.
Thank you. Thank you to you all for your testimonies, your remarks, and your prayers during this service. We'll conclude by singing hymn number 120. How beauteous on the mountains the feet of him that brings like streams from living fountains, good tidings of good things, that publishes salvation, from error brings release to every tribe and nation, God's reign of joy and peace. Hymn number 121.